and would require more specificity in obtaining international communications. That provision would also repeal the telecom immunity provisions that passed last year at the urging of AT&T and others that basically stripped the rights of citizens to pursue cases in courts against phone companies that engaged in warrantless wiretapping at the behest of the Bush administration. Those are two of the key provisions in that bill. It also reforms the national security letter powers, which right now can be issued by the FBI without any court approval and without any evidence specifying that a person is suspected of being a terrorist. Those provisions would be reformed by Senator Feingold and his colleagues to require court oversight for particularly sensitive requests, meaning court approval in advance.
Lisa Graves, this issue of the national security letter is extremely important. Perhaps hundreds of thousands of them have been issued. I think of the librarians who got a national security letter at the Library Connection, the group in Connecticut that run the internet in the Central Connecticut Library System. How the FBI came to them. George Christian, who was the head of it at the time, knocked on the door, handed him an NSL that demanded information about people using the internet at a certain time, a certain place. And they wanted that information. And the librarians fought back. They said no. They sued the U.S. government over the Patriot Act. How are these NSLs used around the country?
Well, that's the example of George Christian and his colleagues who became known as the Connecticut Four is very important because that's a case in which during 2005 the Bush administration was arguing basically that concerns about access to libraries were unfounded and that people didn't need to worry about the government going after libraries. And at the same time, simultaneously, the FBI had issued a national security letter secretly to the Library Connection and then gagged the librarians from telling Congress or anyone that they had received such a letter. And so that particular instance, I think, was definitely used in a way that obscured the public debate, that made it difficult for the public to really understand what was happening. You ended up with allegations on both sides without having access to the truth. So now under the bills
that's a key point on national security letters, is that you are not allowed to say that you got one. You can't tell your partner, you can't tell your boss, you can't tell a colleague on pain of 5 years in prison that you even received a request for information.
It's most definitely a very pernicious prior restraint under the First Amendment. And as you mentioned, there are criminal penalties for violating the non-disclosure requirements. And in fact, this is the type of thing where Mr. Christian has said that he couldn't tell his spouse, his partner, that he had received this request. And so it's very chilling. These librarians couldn't even tell Congress in a general sense that they had received a national security letter. And many businesses, most businesses that receive these letters, in fact, over 200,000 of them have been issued in the past 7 years. Most businesses don't even challenge them. But in that instance, the librarians really stood up for people's First Amendment rights and for the necessity of having some proof before some court that these sorts of powers are authorized. In the instance of Connecticut, the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, found that the gag rule that was part of the Patriot Act was unconstitutional.
And some civil libertarians are asking lawmakers to revisit the June 2008 law that President Obama voted for as senator that grants immunity to telecommunications companies from lawsuits for warrantless wiretapping that was conducted under the Bush administration. Is there any headway on that in Congress?
Well, the fact that we now have 10 senators supporting that repeal is an important marker, because that provision was definitely rammed through Congress at the behest of the Director of National Intelligence and with a whole lot of lobbying by the heads of the United States telephone companies. And that provision really undermines the provision that passed last June really undermines public accountability for warrantless wiretapping, because the law for decades had said that any phone company that cooperates with wiretapping Americans without warrants is liable, is civilly liable, and in fact it makes government officials criminally liable. And so the effort to deny any accountability, any justice for that wrongdoing was most unfortunate. We were obviously disappointed that Senator Obama supported that bill with that provision in it. And it's been unfortunate that the Obama administration has continued the Bush administration's determination in those lawsuits to try to get the lawsuits dismissed.
So explain what is happening on these different issues, like the national security letters. Are they being rewritten? Are they being removed?
Well, I believe that there will be strong support in Congress for revising the national security letter powers and requiring a closer tie between the evidence that's sought and suspected terrorist. And so that's an improvement. I know that there are efforts underway by Senator Feingold and Senator Leahy to basically reform the gag rules to address the unconstitutionality of the law as passed in 2005. So that, I think, enjoys strong support. There are also efforts underway to reform the Section 215 powers, which allow access to any tangible thing without a sufficient showing of facts. Under current law, as passed by the Republican Congress and signed into law by the President, basically the assertions of the government are treated as absolute, are treated as conclusive. And so the new proposals would undo that putting the thumb on the scale of justice.
Lisa Graves, I want to thank you very much for being with us, and congratulations on your new job as Executive Director for the Center for Media and Democracy. And that does it for the broadcast. And we will link to the 2 FBI reports finding FBI agents, or the Justice Department Inspector General reports, finding that FBI agents frequently misuse national security letters to obtain bank, credit card, and telephone records. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Sharif Adokadus, Aramate Angeli Kamet, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Masood, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, Peter Curry is our engineer. Special thanks also to Becca Staley. I'm Amy Goodman with Sharif Adokadus for another edition of Democracy Now!